The stagecoach rattled to a stop in front of the general store in Cherry Creek, Colorado territory, and Martha Oliverson knew her entire future depended on what happened in the next few minutes. She clutched her worn carpetbag and tried to steady her breathing as dust settled around the wheels. Through the small window, she could see a tall man standing near the hitching post, his hat pulled low against the afternoon sun. That had to be him. Lucas Vaughn, the rancher who had sent for a bride, who had written those careful, thoughtful letters over the past 4 months. The man who thought she was 24 years old. She was 18. The lie had started so innocently. Her aunt in Philadelphia had helped her compose that first letter, insisting that no respectable rancher would want someone so young. Add a few years, Aunt Helen had said. What harm could it do? By the time you arrive, you will have proven yourself mature enough through your correspondence. But now, stepping down from the stagecoach onto the dusty street of this small Colorado town in the spring of 1876, Martha felt the weight of that deception like a stone in her stomach. The May sunshine was warm on her shoulders, but she shivered anyway. Lucas Vaughn moved toward her, and she got her first real look at the man she had agreed to marry. He was probably in his late 20s, with sun-weathered skin and eyes that were a startling shade of gray-blue. Tall and broad-shouldered, he moved with the easy confidence of someone who had spent his life working the land. His face was handsome in a rugged way, with strong features that might have seemed severe if not for the slight smile that curved his lips as he approached. Miss Oliverson. His voice was deep and warm. Yes, Mr. Vaughn, Lucas, please. He removed his hat, revealing dark brown hair. Welcome to Cherry Creek. I hope the journey was not too difficult. It was long, but I am well. Martha's throat felt dry. She should tell him now, right now, but the words stuck. Lucas reached for her bag. My wagon is just over there. The ranch is about an hour's ride. I thought you might want to rest a bit first, maybe have some dinner at the hotel, but I am eager to get home before dark. We have been having some trouble with coyotes getting into the chicken coop. No, I am ready to see my new home. Martha fell into step beside him, acutely aware of how tall he was compared to her small frame. She barely reached his shoulder. As they walked toward the wagon, several townspeople stopped to stare. A woman in a blue dress whispered something to her companion. Martha felt her cheeks burn. In a town this size, everyone would know about the mail-order bride arriving today. Lucas seemed oblivious to the attention, or perhaps he was simply used to it. He helped her into the wagon with gentle courtesy, his hands steady at her waist. Then he climbed up beside her and took the reins. The town of Cherry Creek was small but bustling. Martha counted a general store, a saloon, a church, a hotel, and a blacksmith as they rolled down the main street. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still white with snow despite the warming season. The landscape was so different from Philadelphia, so vast and open. For a moment, Martha forgot her anxiety and simply stared in wonder. Beautiful, is it not? Lucas said, following her gaze. I came out here 5 years ago from Missouri. My father had a small farm there, but I wanted something of my own. Built the ranch from nothing. It must have been very difficult. Hard work, but good work. He glanced at her. I was glad when you agreed to come. A ranch is lonely with just one person. I hired a few hands during busy seasons, but it is not the same as having family. Family. The word made Martha's guilt intensify. She gripped her hands together in her lap. Lucas, there is something I need to tell you. What is it? The words tumbled out in a rush. I lied to you, in my letters, about my age. I am not 24 years old. I am 18. My aunt told me to lie because she said no man would want someone so young, but I should have been honest from the start, and I am so sorry. I understand if you want to turn the wagon around right now and take me back to town." Lucas pulled the horses to a stop so abruptly that Martha had to brace herself against the wagon seat. He turned to face her fully, his expression unreadable. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the stamping of the horses and the distant cry of a hawk. Martha felt tears prickling behind her eyes but refused to let them fall. She had done this to herself. Finally, Lucas spoke, his voice low and controlled. 18. Yes. I asked for a woman, not a girl. The words hit her like a physical blow. Martha lifted her chin, forcing herself to meet his eyes. I may be young in years, but I am not a child. I can cook and clean and manage a household. I can read and write and do sums. I have worked hard all my life, and I came here prepared to be a good wife. But if you feel I deceived you too badly to give me a chance, I will accept that. Lucas studied her for a long moment, his gray-blue eyes searching her face. Then he let out a long breath and turned back to the reins. I need to think about this. He did not turn the wagon around. Instead, he clicked his tongue at the horses and they started moving again, continuing down the road that led away from town. Martha sat rigidly beside him, her heart pounding. What was he thinking? Would he send her back? She had no money for return passage. She had burned every bridge in Philadelphia to come here. They rode in silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. The landscape gradually changed from the flat areas near town to rolling hills dotted with sagebrush and wild grasses. In the distance, Martha could see cattle grazing. That is my land, Lucas said finally, pointing. 300 acres, not the biggest ranch in the area, but it is mine, free and clear. The house is just over that rise. Martha saw it as they crested the hill. A sturdy cabin made of logs with a covered porch and a stone chimney. There was a barn nearby and several smaller outbuildings. It looked solid and well-maintained. A home built with care. Lucas brought the wagon to a stop in front of the house. He sat there for a moment, hands still on the reins, not looking at her. My mother was 16 when she married my father, he said quietly. She always said she grew up fast, had me at 17, my brother at 19, my sister at 21. She died when I was 15. Worked herself to death on that farm in Missouri. Martha did not know what to say. I wanted someone older, Lucas continued, someone who had already lived a bit of life. Someone who chose this life knowing what it meant, not because they were running away from something or looking for adventure. He finally turned to look at her. Are you running away, Martha? She considered lying again, but knew she could not after what she had already done. My parents died 2 years ago, influenza. I went to live with my aunt and uncle, but they have 6 children of their own. I was a burden. My aunt was kind about it, but I knew. When she showed me your advertisement, I thought this could be a chance to have a home again. A real home. A family. And what about marriage? What about sharing a life with a stranger? Martha felt her cheeks warm, but she held his gaze. Your letters were kind. You wrote about your dreams for the ranch, about wanting children someday, about reading books by the fire in winter. You sounded like a good man. I hoped that even if we started as strangers, we might grow to care for each other. Lucas was quiet for another long moment. Then he climbed down from the wagon and came around to help her down. His hands at her waist were gentle but impersonal. I will not send you back today, he said, but I need time to decide about the marriage. You can stay in the house. I will sleep in the barn. Relief and disappointment warred in Martha's chest. Thank you. He carried her bag to the house and showed her inside. The cabin was simple but comfortable, with a main room that served as kitchen and living area and 2 smaller rooms branching off. One was clearly Lucas's bedroom. The other appeared to be used for storage. You can take the bedroom, Lucas said. I will clear out that other room for myself later. No, I could not possibly take your room. The storage room will be fine for me. You are a guest in my home. You will take the bedroom. His tone left no room for argument. Martha set her bag down in the doorway of what would be her room, at least for now. When she turned back, Lucas was already heading for the door. "There is food in the pantry," he said without looking back. "Make yourself at home. I have work to do." Then he was gone, leaving Martha alone in the house of a man who was supposed to be her husband, but who now looked at her like she was a problem he had not asked for. She sank into one of the wooden chairs at the table and finally let the tears come. They fell silently, tracking down her cheeks as she looked around at the home she might never truly get to have. She had been so foolish, so desperate and foolish, but crying would not fix anything. Martha wiped her eyes and stood up. If she was going to stay here, even temporarily, she would make herself useful. She explored the pantry and found flour, beans, salt pork, and canned vegetables. Not much variety, but enough to make a decent meal. There was a good cast iron stove and basic cooking implements. Martha set to work. She found an apron hanging on a peg and tied it around her waist. She built up the fire in the stove and started preparing dinner. Biscuits first and beans with salt pork. She found dried apples and decided to make a simple pie. As she worked, she felt her anxiety slowly ease. Cooking was familiar, comforting. Her mother had taught her well, and she had spent the last 2 years helping her aunt feed a household of 9. She knew her way around a kitchen. The sun was setting by the time she had everything ready. She set the table for 2 and then went to the door, looking out toward the barn. She could see Lucas moving around in there, doing evening chores. Should she call him? Wait for him to come. She decided to wait. She did not want to presume too much. But as the sky darkened and the food began to cool, Lucas still had not appeared. Martha felt a knot of worry in her stomach. Finally, she wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and walked out to the barn. Lucas was in one of the stalls, brushing down a large bay horse. He looked up when she entered but did not stop his work. "Dinner is ready," Martha said quietly. "I was not sure if you were planning to come in." "I will eat later. The food will be cold. Then I will eat it cold." His voice was not unkind, just distant. Martha stood there for a moment, feeling awkward and unwelcome. Then she turned to leave. "Martha." She stopped and looked back. Lucas set down the brush and faced her. "I appreciate you making dinner. I need some time to think. This is not how I expected today to go. I understand. I am sorry for disrupting your plans." "It is not just the age thing," Lucas said, running a hand through his hair. "Though that is part of it, it is the lie. How do I know what else you might have lied about? How do I trust you?" The question was fair, and it hurt because Martha had no good answer. "You cannot," she said simply. "Not yet. Trust has to be earned, I know that. All I can do is promise to be honest from now on and hope that, eventually, you will believe me." Lucas nodded slowly. "I will come eat in a bit." "Thank you for cooking." It was a small olive branch, and Martha took it gratefully. She returned to the house and waited. True to his word, Lucas came in about 15 minutes later. He washed up at the basin by the door and then sat at the table. He ate in silence, but Martha noticed he had 2 helpings of everything, including the apple pie. When he was finished, he looked up at her. "That was very good. Thank you. You are welcome. Where did you learn to cook like that?" "My mother, mostly. And then helping my aunt." Martha hesitated. "I told you the truth in my letters about most things. My parents really did die of influenza. I really do love reading. I really did mean everything I wrote about wanting a family and a home. Just not the part about your age. Just not that." Lucas stood and carried his plate to the wash basin. "I am going to sleep in the barn tonight. Tomorrow, I will decide what to do." Martha wanted to argue to plead her case further, but she sensed that pushing now would only make things worse. "Good night, Lucas. Good night." After he left, Martha cleaned up the kitchen and then retreated to the bedroom. It smelled faintly of wood smoke and something else, something masculine that must be Lucas's own scent. The bed was neatly made with a simple quilt. She ran her hand over it, feeling the careful stitches. Had his mother made it? Or perhaps he had bought it from someone in town. She changed into her nightgown and climbed into bed, but sleep was a long time coming. The sounds of the night were so different from the city. Crickets chirping, the distant howl of a coyote, the wind rustling through the grass. And underneath it all, the terrible uncertainty of her future. When Martha finally slept, she dreamed of her parents. Her father's deep laugh, her mother's gentle hands braiding her hair. She woke with tears on her cheeks and a fierce determination in her heart. She had lost one family. She would not give up on the chance for another without a fight. The next morning, Martha was up before dawn. She dressed quickly in one of her simple work dresses and went to the kitchen. She built up the fire in the stove and started breakfast. Coffee, eggs from the chicken coop, and more biscuits. She was just taking the biscuits out of the oven when Lucas came in from the barn. He looked surprised to see her up so early. "You did not have to do this, I know, but I wanted to." They ate together in a less uncomfortable silence than the night before. Lucas seemed tired, with shadows under his eyes. Martha guessed he had not slept much in the barn. "I thought about what you said," Lucas began as he reached for his second cup of coffee. "About trust having to be earned." Martha set down her fork, her heart suddenly racing. "I am still not happy about the lie, but I understand why you did it, even if I do not agree with it." He met her eyes across the table. "You came all this way on faith. That took courage. And you are right that you are not a child, even if you are younger than I expected. Does that mean you are willing to give me a chance? Maybe, but not as my wife, not yet." Lucas held up a hand as Martha started to speak. "Hear me out. We had planned to get married right away, but that was based on 4 months of letters and certain expectations. Things have changed. So here is what I propose. You stay here as my housekeeper. You will have the bedroom, and I will fix up the storage room for myself. You will cook and clean and help with the lighter chores around the ranch. In return, you will have room and board and a small wage. A wage you will be working. That deserves payment. But more importantly, this arrangement gives us time to get to know each other as we really are, not as we imagine through letters. If, after a few months, we both still want to marry, then we will. But if either of us decides it is not right, you will have enough money saved to make a new start somewhere else, and I will help you find a respectable situation." It was a generous offer, far more than Martha had any right to expect. What will people in town think? An unmarried woman living with an unmarried man. "I will tell anyone who asks that you are my housekeeper and that we are courting properly before making any decisions about marriage. Anyone who wants to judge can mind their own business." Lucas's jaw was set in a stubborn line that made Martha think he would indeed tell the gossips exactly that. "Then I accept," Martha said. "Thank you for giving me a chance, Lucas. I will not let you down. We will see." But his expression had softened slightly. Over the next few weeks, Martha threw herself into making the ranch house a real home. She scrubbed every surface until it gleamed. She organized the pantry and made lists of supplies they needed. She planted a small kitchen garden near the house, using seeds from the general store. She mended Lucas's clothes and made curtains for the windows from fabric she found in one of the trunks in the storage room. Lucas was gone most days from dawn until dusk, working the ranch. He had about 50 head of cattle and a small remuda of horses. He repaired fences, moved cattle to fresh grazing, and handled the 100 other tasks that came with running a ranch alone. He hired 2 temporary hands, brothers named Tom and Samuel, to help with some of the heavier work, but he clearly prided himself on managing most of it himself. Martha made sure there was always a hot meal waiting when he came in. She learned his preferences. He liked his coffee strong and black. He preferred savory food to sweet, though he never turned down her apple pie. He read for an hour most evenings before bed, usually histories or agricultural journals. In turn, she learned about the ranch and about Lucas himself. He was a man of few words, but when he did speak, he meant what he said. He was fair with his hired hands and kind to his animals. He had a dry sense of humor that sometimes caught Martha by surprise, making her laugh when she least expected it. One evening about a month after her arrival, Martha was in the kitchen washing dishes when Lucas came in from checking on a cow that was about to calve. He poured himself a cup of coffee and sat at the table watching her work. "You have made this place look different," he said. Martha glanced over her shoulder at him. "I hope that is a good thing." "It is. It feels more like a home now, less like a place I just sleep between work." The compliment warmed her more than it probably should have. "I am glad. Martha, can I ask you something?" "Of course. In your letters you talked about wanting children someday. Do you still feel that way? Or was that something your aunt told you to say?" Martha dried her hands on her apron and turned to face him fully. "That was real. Very real. I love children. I helped care for my younger cousins, and before that, I helped my mother with the neighbors' children sometimes. I always imagined having a family of my own." Lucas nodded, seeming satisfied with her answer. "I want children too. That is part of why I sent for a bride. This ranch, everything I am building, I want it to be for a family, for sons and daughters who will have more than I did growing up. That is a good dream." "Yes, but it is a dream that needs the right partner." His eyes searched her face. "I am starting to think you might be that partner, Martha, but I need to be sure." Hope bloomed in Martha's chest, but she kept her voice steady. "What would make you sure?" "Time and honesty. I need to know I can trust you completely. Then I will keep earning that trust, one day at a time." As spring turned to summer, the relationship between Martha and Lucas gradually shifted. They talked more, sharing stories from their pasts. Lucas told her about growing up in Missouri, about his mother's death and his father's grief afterward, about his decision to come west and build something new. Martha told him about her childhood in Philadelphia, about her father's work as a bookkeeper, about the terrible weeks when both her parents had fallen ill, and she had nursed them until the end. "That must have been terrifying," Lucas said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Being so young and facing that alone." "I was not alone. My aunt came to help, but yes, it was terrifying." Martha's voice went soft. "I kept thinking that if I just worked hard enough, cared for them well enough, they would get better. When they died anyway, I felt like I had failed them." "You did not fail anyone. Sometimes there is nothing to be done." "I know that now. But at 16, all I knew was that my whole world had shattered." Lucas reached over and took her hand. It was the first time he had touched her intentionally since she had arrived, and the contact sent a little thrill through her. His hand was calloused and strong, warm and solid. "I am glad you came here, Martha, even with the rocky start." "So am I." They sat together until the stars came out, hands still linked, and Martha felt something in her chest that might have been the beginning of love. But of course, nothing in life ever went smoothly for long. It was a hot day in late June when trouble arrived. Martha was working in her garden, pulling weeds and checking on the progress of her vegetables, when she heard horses approaching. She stood, shading her eyes against the sun, and saw 3 men riding up to the house. They did not look like they were there for a friendly visit. Lucas was out mending the north fence line with Tom and Samuel. Martha was alone. The men dismounted, and the one in front, a heavy-set man with a graying beard, touched his hat brim. "Afternoon, miss. Is Lucas Vaughn around? He is working on the property. Can I help you with something?" "Name is Calvin Harris. I own the spread that borders Vaughn's land to the east. We have been having some trouble with cattle going missing, and we found some of Vaughn's fence torn down near our property line." Martha's stomach tightened. Mr. Vaughn would never steal cattle. "Did not say he did, but I want to talk to him about that fence. Some folks might think he tore it down to let his cattle graze on my land." "That is ridiculous. Lucas is the most honest man I have ever met." One of the other men, younger with a mean set to his mouth, stepped forward. "And how would you know that, little lady? You are just the help." "I am his fiancée," Martha said, lifting her chin. The lie came out automatically, a way to give herself more authority in this situation. Harris raised his eyebrows. "That's so. Had not heard Vaughn was getting married. We have been keeping it quiet." "Well then, congratulations, but I still need to speak with your man about that fence." At that moment, Martha saw Lucas riding in from the north, Tom and Samuel with him. He must have seen the strange horses and come to investigate. Relief flooded through her. Lucas dismounted and walked toward them, his posture relaxed but his eyes alert. "Harris, what brings you out here? Found your fence torn down on the eastern border. Want to know what you know about it." "I was out that way 2 days ago and it was fine. Someone must have damaged it since then." "Convenient." Lucas's expression hardened. "Say what you mean, Harris." "I mean that I have lost 5 head in the last month, and now your fence just happens to be down right where my cattle have been disappearing from. If you are accusing me of cattle rustling, you better have proof." Lucas's voice was dangerously quiet. "Just saying it looks suspicious." The younger man spoke up again. "Maybe Vaughn here needs money. Heard he has been spending a lot lately. New woman to feed and all." Lucas took a step forward, and Martha saw Tom and Samuel moving to flank him. "You need to leave. Now." Harris held up a hand. "Easy. We are not looking for trouble, just wanted to make you aware of the situation. I will be keeping a close watch on my property line. If I catch anyone where they should not be, there will be consequences." "Same goes for my property," Lucas said. "And you can tell whoever tore down my fence that next time I will be ready for them." Harris and his men mounted up and rode off, leaving dust and tension in their wake. Lucas turned to Martha. "Are you all right? Did they threaten you?" "No, I am fine." "Just unpleasant." She hesitated. "Lucas, I told them I was your fiancé. I am sorry. I know we have not decided anything yet, but I thought it would make me seem more legitimate in their eyes." To her surprise, Lucas smiled slightly. "Quick thinking." "And actually, I have been meaning to talk to you about that." Martha's heart skipped a beat. "About what?" "About making it official, if you are still willing. Are you asking me to marry you?" "I am. I know it has only been a few months, but I know my own mind." "You are honest, hardworking, kind, and brave. You have made this house a home. More than that, I have come to care for you deeply. I think we could be happy together, Martha, if you feel the same way." Joy surged through Martha, so intense it made her dizzy. Yes, I feel the same way. I think I started falling in love with you when you took my hand that night on the porch." Lucas grinned, a real smile that transformed his whole face, and then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, and then deeper as Martha responded. Her first kiss, and it was everything she had dreamed it would be. When they finally pulled apart, Tom and Samuel were grinning at them from over by the barn. "About time, boss," Tom called out. Lucas laughed and turned back to Martha. "Let me talk to the preacher. We can be married this Sunday if that suits you." "It suits me perfectly." but the happiness of their engagement was tempered by the situation with Harris. Over the next few days, Lucas rode the fence line regularly, checking for damage. He found 2 more sections torn down and what looked like deliberate tracks leading from his property toward Harris's land. "Someone is trying to make me look guilty," Lucas said over dinner one night. "The question is who and why." "Could it be Harris himself?" Martha asked. "Maybe he wants your land." "It is possible. Or it could be someone else entirely, someone who wants us fighting each other while they steal cattle from both of us." The mystery weighed on all of them, but Martha refused to let it ruin their wedding plans. She went into town with Lucas, and they spoke to Reverend Patterson at the small church. The Reverend was a kindly older man who agreed to perform the ceremony that Sunday after the regular service. Word spread quickly through Cherry Creek. When Sunday arrived, the church was full of curious townspeople who wanted to see the mail-order bride marry the rancher. Martha wore her best dress, a simple blue cotton that she had carefully pressed the night before. She had no family to stand with her, but Lucas's hired hands Tom and Samuel were there, along with a few neighbors who had been friendly. As Martha walked down the short aisle toward where Lucas stood waiting at the altar, she felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This was meant to be. All the pain and loss and uncertainty of the past 2 years had led her here, to this man, to this life. Lucas looked handsome in his Sunday suit, his hair neatly combed and his gray-blue eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. When she reached him, he took her hand and held it tightly, as if afraid she might disappear. The ceremony was short and simple. They spoke their vows in clear, steady voices. When Reverend Patterson pronounced them husband and wife, Lucas kissed her gently, and the small congregation applauded. Afterwards, several of the church ladies had organized a small reception in the churchyard. There was lemonade and cake, and people came up to congratulate them. Not everyone was friendly. Martha saw a few women whispering behind their hands, their expressions judgmental. But most people seemed genuinely happy for them. Calvin Harris was there, surprisingly. He approached Lucas with a neutral expression. "Congratulations, Vaughn." "Thanks. Look, I have been thinking about this fence situation. I do not think you are behind the rustling. Someone is playing us against each other. Glad you see it that way. How about we work together to figure out who is really responsible?" Lucas considered for a moment, then nodded. "All right, stop by tomorrow and we will talk." The reception did not last long. Lucas was clearly eager to get home, and Martha was too. They rode back to the ranch in the wagon, sitting close together. As they pulled up to the house, Martha felt a flutter of nerves. This was her wedding night. She was now truly Lucas's wife. Lucas must have sensed her anxiety. As he helped her down from the wagon, he said quietly, "We will take things at your pace, Martha. There is no rush." But when they were inside, when Lucas pulled her close and kissed her again, Martha found that her nerves faded. This was right. She loved this man, and she wanted to be fully his wife in every way. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, Lucas gentle and patient with her inexperience. Afterwards, lying in his arms in the darkness, Martha felt a profound sense of peace. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." Lucas kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for giving me a second chance." The next morning, life returned to its usual rhythms, except now Martha and Lucas shared the bedroom, and there was a new ease between them, an intimacy that had not been there before. They were truly partners now, in every sense. Calvin Harris came by as promised, and he and Lucas spent the afternoon riding the property lines together, looking for clues. They found fresh tracks near one of the damaged fence sections, and Harris recognized the horseshoe pattern. It belonged to a drifter named Jake Morley, who had been working for Harris briefly, before being fired for laziness. "I will talk to the sheriff," Harris said. "If Morley has been rustling from both of us and trying to start a range war to cover his tracks, he needs to be stopped." Sure enough, when the sheriff investigated, they found a dozen head of cattle hidden in a canyon about 5 miles away, mixed stock from both Lucas's and Harris's herds. Jake Morley and 2 accomplices were arrested in a nearby town trying to sell the cattle. The threat resolved, life at the ranch settled into a peaceful routine. Summer turned to fall, and Martha discovered she was pregnant. Lucas was overjoyed, already making plans for a cradle and talking about adding rooms to the house. "We will need space for a whole family," he said, his hand resting gently on her still flat stomach. "At least 4 or 5 children, do you not think?" Martha laughed. "Let us see how this first one goes before we plan for 5. But secretly, she loved his enthusiasm. She loved everything about their life together. The pregnancy was not easy. Martha suffered from morning sickness well into her 4th month, and the winter was harsh that year. But Lucas was attentive and caring, taking over many of the household tasks when she was too tired or sick to manage them. Their son was born in early April of 1877, during a late spring snowstorm. The labor was long and difficult, with only Lucas and a midwife from town to help. But when Martha finally held her baby in her arms, all the pain was forgotten. "What should we name him?" Lucas asked, looking down at them both with wonder in his eyes. "What was your father's name?" "Henry." "Then let us call him Henry Lucas Vaughn." Lucas blinked rapidly, clearly moved. "That is perfect." Little Henry was a healthy, loud baby who demanded constant attention. Martha had never been so exhausted or so happy. Watching Lucas with their son filled her with a fierce love. He was so gentle, so patient, singing soft songs as he walked the floor with a crying baby in the middle of the night, teaching Henry to grip his finger with tiny, determined hands. As Henry grew from infant to toddler, the ranch prospered. Lucas expanded his herd and bought more land. He built the additions to the house he had promised, including a proper nursery and another bedroom for future children. Tom and Samuel became permanent employees, building their own small cabin on the property. When Henry was 2, Martha became pregnant again. This time she knew what to expect, and the pregnancy was easier. Their daughter, Anne, was born in the fall of 1879, a chubby baby with her father's gray-blue eyes and her mother's dark hair. "Our family is growing," Lucas said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching Henry play in the yard while Martha nursed baby Anne. "I never imagined I could be this happy." "Neither did I. When I stepped off that stagecoach, I was so scared, I thought you would send me right back." "I almost did." Lucas reached over and took her hand. "Thank God I did not. Thank God you gave me a chance to prove myself." "You have proven yourself 1,000 times over, Martha. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." They sat together as the sun set, their children nearby, the ranch stretching out around them. Martha thought about how far she had come from that frightened 18-year-old girl with a lie on her conscience. She had found her home, her family, her purpose. She had found love. 3 more children followed over the next 6 years. Another son, James, born in 1881. Twin daughters, Elizabeth and Catherine, born in 1883. The house that had once seemed so large felt small and noisy with 5 children running through it, but Martha would not have changed a thing. Lucas thrived as a father. He taught Henry and James to ride and rope. He read bedtime stories to Anne and the twins. He was firm but fair, patient but strong. He built a legacy not just in the land and cattle, but in the family he was raising. Martha often thought about those early days, about the lie that had almost cost her everything. She was grateful, every single day, that Lucas had chosen to see past that mistake to the person she really was. She had learned that trust was not given, it was earned, and that honesty was the foundation of any real relationship. The ranch continued to grow. Lucas eventually employed a dozen men full-time. He became one of the most respected ranchers in the region, known for his fair dealing and quality cattle. Calvin Harris became a good friend, their families visiting back and forth regularly. Harris's daughter even married Tom, one of Lucas's first hired hands. Cherry Creek grew too, from a small frontier town to a bustling community. A school was built, and Martha served on the school board. A new church replaced the old one, and the Vaughns were pillars of the congregation. The wild edge of the West was slowly being tamed, and Martha and Lucas were part of that transformation. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Lucas surprised Martha with a trip to Denver, just the two of them. The children stayed with Tom and his wife for the week. It was the first time Martha and Lucas had been truly alone since Henry was born. They stayed in a nice hotel, ate in restaurants, and walked through the bustling streets of the city. One evening, as they sat in their hotel room, Lucas pulled out a small box. "I never gave you a proper wedding ring," he said. "We were in such a hurry and money was tight, but I have been saving and I wanted you to have this." Inside the box was a simple gold band set with 3 small diamonds. It was not extravagant, but it was beautiful. Martha felt tears prick her eyes as Lucas slipped it onto her finger. "It is perfect, but you did not need to do this. I have been happy with my plain band." "I know, but I wanted you to have something special, something that shows how much you mean to me." Martha kissed him, pouring 10 years of love and gratitude into it. "I do not need diamonds to know that, but I will treasure this always." That night, lying in the unfamiliar hotel bed with Lucas beside her, Martha reflected on the journey that had brought them there. From mail-order bride to wife, from stranger to soulmate, from frightened girl to confident woman. Every challenge, every moment of doubt, every hard-won victory had led to this. A marriage built on honesty, trust, and deep, abiding love. When they returned home, the children greeted them with shrieks of joy. Henry, now 10 years old and serious like his father, reported that everything had gone well. James, 8 and adventurous, wanted to know all about Denver. Anne, 7 and sweet, just hugged Martha and would not let go. The twins, 6 years old and identical in appearance but opposite in temperament, talked over each other in their excitement. Lucas scooped up the twins, one in each arm, and Martha held Anne while Henry and James pressed close. They stood there in the yard of the ranch house, the 6 of them together, and Martha knew this was everything she had ever wanted. The years continued to pass. The children grew. Henry became a fine young man, learning everything Lucas could teach him about running the ranch. At 18, he was already being courted by several fathers with marriageable daughters. James was more interested in books than cattle, and Lucas encouraged him to pursue schooling beyond what Cherry Creek could offer. The girls were smart and spirited, each finding their own paths. When Martha was 35, she realized she was pregnant again. She had thought her childbearing years were over, but apparently fate had one more surprise for them. Lucas was thrilled, though worried about her health at this age. Their 6th child, another son they named Thomas after Lucas's brother who had died young, was born in 1888. He was a late blessing, arriving when his oldest sibling was already nearly grown. The older children doted on baby Thomas, and Lucas joked that the boy would be spoiled rotten with so many people to love him. Martha had to agree. But watching Lucas with their youngest, seeing the same wonder and love in his eyes that had been there with their firstborn, she felt blessed beyond measure. As the 1890s approached, Martha looked back at nearly 15 years of marriage with deep satisfaction. She and Lucas had built something beautiful together. Not just the ranch, though that was impressive in its own right, with over 1,000 acres now and 200 head of cattle. Not just the children, though each one was a treasure. But the life they had created, the partnership they had forged, the love that had grown from uncertain beginnings into something unshakable. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Henry came to talk to them. He was 20 now, a man grown. "Father, Mother, I have something to ask you." Lucas set down his coffee. "What is it, son?" "I want to ask Sarah Harris to marry me, but I wanted your blessing first." Martha and Lucas exchanged a smile. Sarah was Calvin Harris's youngest daughter, a sweet girl who had been friends with the Vaughn children for years. "You have my blessing," Lucas said. "Does she know yet?" "Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first." "Well, do not wait too long. A good woman is worth moving heaven and earth for." Lucas glanced at Martha with a look that still made her heart flutter after all these years. Henry grinned. "I know. I learned from the best." After Henry left to go find Sarah, Lucas turned to Martha. "Our son is getting married. When did we get old enough for that?" Martha laughed. "I do not feel old. Neither do I, not when I am with you." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, then Lucas said, "Do you ever think about that day you arrived, when you told me you had lied about your age? Sometimes. I was so frightened. I was angry and confused. I felt like the ground had shifted under me. Do you ever regret giving me a chance?" Lucas turned to her, his gray-blue eyes serious. "Not for one single second. That choice to let you stay, to get to know you, to let myself love you, was the best decision I ever made. You gave me everything I ever wanted. A home, a family, a partner, a love that has sustained me through every challenge. How could I ever regret that?" Tears slipped down Martha's cheeks, but they were happy tears. "I love you so much, Lucas Vaughn, and I love you, Martha Vaughn. From now until forever." As the stars came out over the Colorado plains, Martha leaned against her husband's shoulder and thought about the long, unlikely journey that had brought her here. She had started as a desperate girl with a secret, had become a woman who learned that honesty and hard work could build a life, and had ended as a wife, mother, and partner in a love story for the ages. The Wild West was changing, becoming less wild with each passing year. But some things remained constant: the land, the sky, the cycle of seasons, and the love between a rancher and the mail-order bride who had dared to tell the truth, even when it might cost her everything. Henry married Sarah Harris in the spring of 1891, in the same church where Martha and Lucas had wed 14 years earlier. It was a joyful celebration, two families joining together. Calvin Harris had tears in his eyes as he gave away his daughter, and Martha understood completely. Letting your children go was bittersweet, no matter how happy you were for them. Henry and Sarah built a house on the eastern section of the ranch, and Henry took over more and more of the day-to-day operations. Lucas was still active and involved, but he was content to let his son shoulder more of the burden. It gave him more time with the younger children and with Martha. James went to college in Denver, studying to be a teacher. Anne, beautiful and gentle at 18, was being courted by the new doctor in town, a kind young man from Boston. The twins were 16, Elizabeth serious and studious, Catherine wild and adventurous. And little Thomas, now 7, was the joy of the household, keeping everyone on their toes. On a summer day in 1893, Martha was in her kitchen, the same kitchen where she had cooked that first nervous meal for Lucas so many years ago. It had been expanded and improved, but it was still her domain, the heart of the home. She was making preserves from the berries she and the twins had picked that morning when Lucas came in, dusty from a day's work. He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Smells good. It will be even better once it is finished." Martha leaned back against him, comfortable in his embrace. "How was your day?" "Good. Henry is really getting the hang of things. I think in another year or two he will be ready to take over completely." "And what will you do then?" "Spend more time with my beautiful wife. Maybe travel a bit, see some of the world beyond Colorado. We could visit James in Denver, maybe even go to San Francisco or back east to Philadelphia." Martha turned in his arms to face him. "I would like that, though I never need to go anywhere as long as I am with you. Still, it might be nice. We have worked hard for a lot of years. We have earned some time for ourselves." "We have," Martha agreed, "though I cannot imagine anywhere I would rather be than right here." "Not even Philadelphia," Martha shook her head. "That was another lifetime. This is my home. This ranch, this family, this is where I belong." Lucas kissed her, a sweet, familiar kiss that still had the power to make her pulse quicken. "I am glad you feel that way, because I could not imagine this life without you." That evening, the whole family gathered for dinner, a weekly tradition that Martha insisted on. The table was crowded now, with Henry and Sarah, and often Tom and his family as well. It was noisy and chaotic, with multiple conversations happening at once, children laughing, and the comfortable closeness of people who loved each other. As Martha looked around the table, she felt a wave of gratitude so intense it was almost overwhelming. This was what she had dreamed of when she stepped off that stagecoach in Cherry Creek 17 years ago. Family, belonging, love. After dinner, as the younger children played outside and the adults relaxed on the porch, Sarah came to sit beside Martha. Henry's wife was pregnant with their first child, due in the fall, and Martha could see the glow of happiness on her face. "Martha, can I ask you something?" Sarah said quietly. "Of course, dear. How do you do it? How do you make a marriage work, make it last, make it happy like yours and Lucas's? I want that for me and Henry, but I do not know if I know how." Martha thought for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I think the most important thing is honesty, complete honesty, even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. Lucas and I started with a lie and it almost destroyed us before we even began. But once we got past that, once we learned to be completely truthful with each other, everything else fell into place." "What else?" "Respect. Not just love, but genuine respect for each other. Lucas never treated me like I was less than him because I was a woman or because I was younger. He valued my opinions, my work, my dreams, and I did the same for him. We are partners, truly equals." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "And patience," Martha continued. "Marriage is not always easy. There are hard times, disagreements, moments when you have to choose to love even when you do not feel like it. But if you can be patient with each other, if you can remember that you are on the same side, working toward the same goals, you can get through anything. You make it sound simple. It is simple, but simple is not the same as easy." Martha smiled. "But I promise you, it is worth every bit of effort you put into it. Look at what Lucas and I have built together. Not just this ranch or this family, but the life we share. Every moment of joy, every triumph, every blessing is sweeter because we share it. And every hardship, every loss, every challenge is easier to bear because we face it together." Sarah reached over and squeezed Martha's hand. "Thank you. I hope Henry and I can have even half of what you and Lucas have. I think you will have even more. Because you are starting from a place of love and trust, without the obstacles Lucas and I had to overcome." As autumn arrived and the leaves turned gold on the cottonwoods, Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Henry and Sarah named him Lucas, after his grandfather, and watching Lucas hold his namesake for the first time, Martha saw the circle of life continuing. The rancher who had given a frightened mail-order bride a second chance was now a grandfather, his legacy secure in the next generation. The years that followed were full and rich. James finished his education and took a position as headmaster at a school in Denver. Anne married the doctor and moved into town, where she helped him run his practice. Elizabeth, studious and serious, followed James into teaching, while Catherine, wild and free, surprised everyone by falling in love with a traveling photographer and heading west to San Francisco. Thomas grew into a strong, capable young man who loved the ranch as much as Lucas did. He would be the one to carry on the legacy. Everyone could see that. Martha and Lucas did take that trip to San Francisco to visit Catherine, and another to Philadelphia, so Martha could see the city of her birth again. But everywhere they went, they were always eager to return home to Cherry Creek, to the ranch that was the center of their world. In the summer of 1900, as a new century dawned, Martha and Lucas celebrated their 23rd wedding anniversary. Their children threw them a party, inviting half the county. The ranch house and yard were full of people, music, and laughter. As the sun began to set and guests started to drift away, Martha and Lucas found themselves alone on their porch, the same place they had shared so many conversations over the years. 23 years, Lucas said, shaking his head in wonder. Where did the time go? Into every moment we have shared. Every sunrise, every meal, every conversation, into our children and our grandchildren, into this life we built together. Lucas pulled her close. If I could go back to that day in 1876, when a young woman stepped off the stagecoach and told me she had lied about her age, would I change anything? Would you? Not a single thing. Because every moment, every choice, every challenge led us here. And here is exactly where I want to be. Martha rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the warmth of his embrace. I love you, Lucas Vaughn. Thank you for seeing past my mistakes to the person I could become. I love you, Martha Vaughn. Thank you for taking a chance on a lonely rancher with more dreams than sense. They sat together as the stars came out, as they had done thousands of times before and would do thousands of times more, God willing. The wild west of their youth was gone, replaced by a more civilized, settled land. But their love remained as wild and free and true as it had been from the beginning. And as Martha looked out over the ranch, at the lights in the houses of their children and grandchildren, at the land they had nurtured and protected, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Not because of fate or luck, but because of choices. The choice to be honest even when it was hard. The choice to trust even when trust had been broken. The choice to love fully and completely with all the risk and vulnerability that entailed. She had come west as a mail-order bride with a secret. She had stayed as a housekeeper earning trust. And she had remained as a wife, partner, and the love of Lucas Vaughn's life. It was a story she would tell her grandchildren someday. A story about honesty, second chances, and the transformative power of love. The night deepened around them, full of promise and peace, and Martha knew that whatever the future held, she and Lucas would face it together, hand in hand, heart to heart, until their last day on this earth and beyond.